Good morning, this is Shelby Law with the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for Wednesday, January 13th, 2016. Precipitation for the last 7 days was mainly limited to southern portions of the Great Basin and was generally below normal elsewhere across the northern two-thirds of the area, except for a portion of the east central Idaho mountains. Snowpack remains normal to above normal across much of the area, and we're still seeing those much above normal values across northern and central Nevada and southern Utah. Air dispersion hasn't been that great over the past few days, as we've seen generally ridging in place across the Great Basin, but that's all about to change with the series of troughs that are going to be making their way through the Great Basin, beginning really today and then continuing through the weekend and even into the first part of next week. This should give us at least a few days of good ventilation. Ventilation rates are still fairly poor today across much of the region, as we're just beginning to see that first trough move into western portions of the Great Basin. These values should be improving by tomorrow, however. These images show us that transport winds are still fairly light across much of the Great Basin except over portions of western Nevada and even up into portions of western and central Idaho. And mixing heights are still quite low, keeping the ventilation rates low, except over portions of western Nevada and western Idaho, as we begin to see that low moving closer to the western portions of the Great Basin today. Overnight tonight and into tomorrow, we'll see one of the first troughs move through the Great Basin, and this will increase ventilation rates across much of the area as transport winds pick up and mixing heights increase, particularly over Utah. On Friday, northerly flow remains in place across the Great Basin, and we'll continue to see storms, particularly over eastern portions of the Great Basin. Ventilation rates on Friday should be sufficient to allow for burning across much of the area. Transport winds pick up over Idaho, eastern Nevada, and much of Utah, with increasing mixing heights across much of those same areas. The clearing index for Utah only is shown here. It looks like Thursday and Friday are going to be the best days for those higher values, allowing for prescribed fire activity. The 3-day precipitation accumulation image is shown here for the period of Wednesday through Saturday morning. The highest precipitation accumulation amounts are expected over western Idaho, along the higher elevations of northern and central Utah, and across portions of northern Nevada. Friday into Saturday, another wave will come through, bringing snow once again to much of the eastern portions of the Great Basin, keeping ventilation rates somewhat higher over portions of Utah and western Wyoming. Weak ridging could build in for Sunday across the southern half of the Great Basin, leading to perhaps some decreased ventilation rates, but they won't be long-lived. More of the same is generally expected on Monday, with possibly some precipitation across portions of the area, but not really great mixing or ventilation. On Tuesday, those values improve once again as another trough drops into the Great Basin. So we're really looking for a somewhat progressive pattern over the next 7 days, with many days that should allow for prescribed fire activities and an increase in precipitation across much of the region, particularly Idaho, northern and central Utah, and portions of northern Nevada. Accumulations shown here for the days 4 and 5, going through Saturday through Monday of next week, and much of the precipitation during that time frame is going to be limited to western and central Idaho. The extended forecast from the Climate Prediction Center going into the 3rd week of January is calling for above normal temperatures across the Great Basin with also above normal precipitation. This concludes today's smoke dispersion briefing. Please check back on Monday for the latest updates.